next. So just a quick highlight of what we're gonna do here today. The cause of the issue, highlights of the settlement, what comes next, talking points for buyers, a lender portion, and then we'll do a Q&A at the end. If you could keep the questions until the end, just so that we can kind of talk and get over with, because we all love the sounds of our own voices since we're lawyers. But we are gonna go as fast as we can because we don't want to take up all your time either. So Dan, tell us about the class action.
Yep, so a little background on me. I work with Mark. Mark and I actually filed our own class action, national class action against FCA, which is the manufacturer of Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Chrysler. It's akin to the Hyundai Kia lawsuit that I'm sure all of you heard about, is the theft prone defect. FCA is way worse. Don't want to get into it, although I could talk to you about that all night. Anyhow, that gives us the background to assess what's happening and gives us more experience so we can talk to you about what's actually happening and not just giving these generalizations and just rehashing things that are already out there. So when we talk about the settlement that you've all seen, I think it was published like on Monday. It's a proposed settlement in 2 lawsuits. There are copycat lawsuits across the nation. So unlike the class action that we filed, these class actions are not national classes. I think that's because the parties that are being sued are the local MLSs. So when you have multiple defendants like that, it's hard to make it a national class. So what does that mean? There's going to be hundreds of lawsuits. I don't know how many MLSs are out there, but there's a lot. So when we talk about a settlement, there's only 2 lawsuits. It doesn't release every single agent. It just can't possibly. And I looked at these 2 lawsuits. I didn't see any Illinois claims. I didn't see MRED in there. So I think the settlement that you've seen wouldn't even apply to you. But what I think they did is NAR published it to give everybody kind of the framework that they were aiming for. So you saw the items that they conceded on, no fee split in the MLS, so you can't publish that anymore. A solution to that would be use a non-NAR MLS, because then you don't have to comply with that settlement. But all these concessions and rules that we see, it's really just worthless right now. It's just a framework. It hasn't even been, from what we've seen, it hasn't even been agreed to by the plaintiffs, and it would still need to be approved by the court. I saw some things in there that I think will make it very difficult for the court to approve it. But you guys got to understand, this is best case scenario for NAR. That's what they're hoping for. That's what they hope to achieve. I don't know if they're going to get it. And I can guarantee you, if these plaintiffs who already have a $1.8 billion judgment against NAR decided to settle for $400 million, I don't think NAR is going to survive. Because why would you discount yourself, by a third or more than that, by a quarter, when you already have a judgment? I'll talk about, so just so everybody understands, when a judgment is entered, interest begins to accrue. It's like 5% in federal court. 5% interest on a $1.8 billion judgment is like $250K per day.
Oh.
It's just going to eat them alive. Like, it's over, guys. The judgment isn't enforceable right now because the judge delayed it so he could hear post-trial motions, things like that. That's going to be wound up, probably, I would say, like midsummer, and then the judgment's fully enforceable. The clock is ticking. NAR's trying to get a settlement. They're trying to cram it through. So that's what you've heard about. But as for you guys, like, I read those complaints. Nobody in here did anything wrong. All right. In order for you to post on MRED, you had to be a member of NAR, right? And I'm sure you guys hate it. I don't know, what are the membership fees annually for just a standard realtor to be part of NAR? Yeah, so $600 per year.
That includes the MRED.
In Illinois, so we're paying it all together. It's like
So $700 per year, so you can post your own listings on their on their system. It doesn't make any sense. And you want to talk about antitrust? I think you guys have been taken advantage of by NAR, being forced to join them so you can have some tied in product, which is being able to list your things on their system. So you didn't have a choice. In order to list your properties, you had to follow their rules. One of their rules was what they call the adversary commission rule, which is that you must offer something to the buyer's agent. You take that away, I don't think any of these cases win. It's because it was written in stone that you must offer something. The whole characterization that buyer's agents are somehow taking advantage of the seller, just to me, doesn't hold water.
Mhm.
Because I'll give you, so what about commercial landlords? They very often, they know the deal, they offer a commission to the leasing agent, right? Because they want their property to be sold. Or property to be leased, they want tenants to come in and look at it. So they offer those commissions, knowingly do it, they're not being duped into it. It's the same thing with the seller. Seller of real estate. So you have your listing agent. Listing agent's not gonna go out there and find you buyers, right? The buyers are gonna come to you, come to the listing. And it's a reason why we call the buyer's agents the selling agent. You guys are the ones that are selling the buyers on the property, right? You're probably doing more of the sale than the listing agent is. And there's nothing wrong with that. A buyer comes to you, they tell you what they want, it becomes an emotional decision, there's not much inventory, people are getting weird and crazy. And you find a house that's perfect for them, and you're gonna tell them flat out, this is the perfect house for you, stop looking, take it. There's nothing wrong with that. And I don't see anything wrong with splitting the commissions. It's simply that fixed in stone rule that you had to pay something to the buyer's agent. That's gonna be gone now, obviously, that's just wiped off. All these other concessions that NAR made, I don't know if they're necessary. But when I say that, what I'm talking about is just the antitrust claims, there's other claims out there. I think some other
Yeah.
guys are gonna talk about some of the other threats to real estate agents right now, and it's not just you. It could be the attorneys, and it could be the title side also. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to the next one. who's gonna
Well,
talk
so the big thing that Dan is really hitting on, what he just said is question who you're getting your information from. Don't rely on Instagram and TikTok and even, CNN, Fox News, make sure that who you're talking to is a lawyer that knows what they're talking about, does class actions, has some sort of a knowledge as to what's happening here, because everyone can scare you as much as they want. It just doesn't really mean anything. But, as Dan said, the lawsuit's, far from over. And one of the big portions that Rick's gonna talk about is the DOJ stance on decoupling commissions completely. So, Rick, why don't you take over?
So hi, I'm Rick Johnson. I used to work with Mark, but I was able to successfully decouple from him. So I consider myself an expert in this area. Not a whole lot. I mean, you touched on it earlier, just about the whole with decoupling is that you were forced to go on the MLS basically, and you had to offer commission to a buyer's agent. So with decoupling is the saying, okay, you can no longer do that. You have to take it off the MLS. And there really seems to be a big push to have the process start with the buyer, negotiate with the buyer's agent up front. And they've talked about having buyer agent agreements. So we've seen some of those, like an exclusive agreement with the buyer's agent to either pay them a certain amount or reimburse them for whatever amount the seller's not offering. And I think that's really where a lot of the questions come in, a lot of the uncertainty comes in, is how, I think you could have, there may be some good points about how that doesn't, the DOJ's position is that's anti-competitive, but in the real estate market, I really do think it helps to have that, because now you're adding another layer of negotiation that's going to delay deals and be harder to put deals together, and a lot more uncertainty for both buyer and the seller. So that's what decoupling is.
Yeah, and what Dan was kind of referring to earlier was what Dan was referring to earlier was the Department of Justice has already stated they are making a top to bottom, like 50 state review from, hey, I got a house to sell and I don't have a house to buy. I want to buy a house to the closing. So depending on how things go in November, you may have another 4 years of being under like harsh scrutiny. And this has been going on, Sitzer Burnett's been going on since what, 2019? And for years, all I've been hearing about is that's not gonna happen. They can't do that. They can't do that. Well, they did it. Okay. And it's happening right now. So you've got to figure out how are you going to get in front of this, especially if they do a hard decouple. If the DOJ gets the way that they want and they enforce that rule, you can't even get the seller to pay anything to your side, buy side. Okay. That's it. Buyer has to pay you. Now, I remember being a first-time home buyer. I didn't have any money. I had to get a refrigerator on a payment plan and live out of a freaking cooler for 2 weeks because the fridge broke, okay? I don't know how that's gonna work. So, and again, you do offer an actual valuable resource to these people. Like Dan was saying, buy side, like, I need to know, am I getting screwed? What the hell am I doing? And it's especially even worse in states that, or counties that don't use attorneys, because it's literally, what do I do? And you're looking at them like, look, man, like, you can't even afford to give me $1,000. And I'm gonna spend 50 hours driving around all over the place to get a house that maybe you can't even afford. It's absurd. So that whole, and the whole scheme, the whole argument that this is gonna, I get it, like the DOJ, everybody wants housing prices to get under control. So they try to destroy the economy, hasn't really worked. Try to raise interest rates, hasn't really done anything. What do, right? You try to lower the cost. So now, you heard on the state, if you watch the State of the Union, they're talking about getting rid of title insurance on Fannie, Freddie, okay, sounds good, that's good. It could happen, attorney opinion letters, whatever, it doesn't matter, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, you have a seller, they want to sell their house for what it's worth. I don't care that I'm going to save, cool, I don't have to pay out 2.5%. Then I'm going to keep it. And I'm still going to sell my house because I've got 15 people that wrote offers on it. Why am I going to lower it by 2.5%? Because the buyers, like, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So really shifting gears. Yes. Is it all up in the air? Yeah. But the people here, you are the ones that are actually going to be prepared for when that tide comes, because it's coming. And I deal with it in my industry too. You got these stupid idiot attorneys. Behind them is a tempest growing and brewing, and it's going to wipe out their entire industry. And they're just, it's great. Another great day. It's awesome. I'm going to buy a BMW tomorrow and then a new house. Like, no, guys, wake up. The tide is shifting. I'm at least preparing. He's preparing. They're all preparing. You're here. You're preparing. You can't tell you how many people I've talked to in the last, since Friday, that are just like, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. I'm not here to be your dad and tell you it's going to be fine. I'm here to tell you how to get ready so you can be prepared if that settlement goes through, if there's further actions. There's other lawsuits. There's still the buyer side stuff, that's the buyer side commission lawsuit that's going through against NAR and all these others. I don't know, maybe Berkshire Hathaway will come and pay everybody off. A couple months of interest from Warren Buffett, who'll clean it all up for everybody. I don't know, but you can hope. But anyway, so the real focus for today, for you guys, you kind of get a lay of the land. But what do you do? What is the game plan? How can we structure your deals so that you can still get paid? And how do you better, again, when you're on the listing side, obviously, it's a good idea to offer, like Dan was saying, offer something to get a quality buyer, but you can't put it on the MLS now. So what are we going to do? How do we get around that? And how do you prove your value? And you do have real value when you're representing a buyer, whether it's a first-time home buyer, an investor, or again, like somebody that, I don't know, like in like Florida, we deal with like a lot of VRBOs and Airbnbs. Those agents are working their ass off, giving, it may not be a like MBA level treatise on how that property is going to perform, but they're giving you actual localized data based on, hey, this condo building rented out like this for the last 24 months, but there was a hurricane. So when you correct for that, this is what your ROI should look like. And okay. And I'm not there. I'm in Ohio buying this. I'm going to go down one time and maybe see it on my closing day, or maybe not even then. That's real value. You guys add that value. So don't let CNN and all this other bullshit tell you about, I have to cut that one, but don't let them tell you how this is this earth shattering. No, it's reformatting how you have to approach your jobs and add value and express that value to your clients. Good example. And then I'll shut up because I could just go all night too. Good example, probably 30, 40 years ago, attorneys that did probate work would be able to charge a percentage of the actual estate. That was their attorney fee. I'm going to charge you 2%. I'm going to sell, I'll open up probate, we'll sell the house, we'll do the bank accounts, this, that, and the other. Sounds pretty great. You do that now, you're getting disbarred. Like probably as soon as that estate is closing, you're paid because it's not reasonable fee. It's not even tied into reality. So your goal, think about it. If that's the structure that we're under, that's probably the structure you're going to get to. So you got to show the time that you spend, that what you do is more than just, and they're out there. They're not here right now. They're probably sleeping, but there's some agents just, here's an MLS list. I don't know. Let me know when you find one. We'll get you a code. I can't go because I gotta go pick up the dry cleaning and then I gotta work at Jewel for a couple of shifts before I pick my kid up from school. Wow, man, you definitely earned your money. Like, come on. You know what I'm talking about. And that's what I'm saying is there's gonna be short-term pain while those people wash out. And in the end, the quality professionals that are polished, that have a product, that have a service that you can provide, like you guys, you're here at 6:30 on a Wednesday, you actually care, you're gonna be able to survive, you're gonna thrive because now you've got people that are willing to pay you for what you do. I don't even know who's next. I
Alright,
just-
so, yeah, as we know, lawyers like to hear their own. So, with everything Mark just said, and decimating my outline completely.
Yeah, sorry, dude.
We're gonna go
Gotta
back, we're gonna go
keep their
back a little bit, we're gonna take it back, and, we're gonna go to Andrew, just to kind of build off of everything Mark's saying. So the big thing right now is the NAR settlement, their fact sheet, read the thing, said the same sentence about 25 times. You retain the right of consumers to continue to have cooperative communication as long as they pursue it off MLS through negotiation and consultation with real estate professionals. So Andrew, what does that mean? Should brokers be going out, making their own apps or websites? Could this lead to steering claims? Should we follow the commercial approach? Should they act as consultants and just pay out whatever their commission would have been? Or, you know, I guess the last thing is, what if a client just doesn't even have the money to pay?
Which happens a lot. I am Andrew Costa. I'm another attorney in Mark's office. A lot of you do know me from that. Mark took a little bit of my wind away on
Sorry.
some of the stuff I was going to talk about. I think he hit the nail on the head when he said this is not going to change the price of these houses. I just went under contract on one myself and it was way too expensive. That's not going to change. Sellers want the most money. We all know that. They're not going to care that they're not paying buyer's commission necessarily anymore. I think it's a little bit too early to know for sure exactly how things will change once this all goes through. But I think as long as there's not a complete decoupling, there will be a little bit of an effort to try and keep things as status quo as possible. Of course, you won't be able to show the commission the buyer's agent will get on the MLS anymore. But I believe a lot of agents, listing agents, will start creating their own websites, listing what the commission will be on the Zillows, the Redfins, the Realtor.coms, all of those kind of things. So when you are looking for properties, you'll then be looking at those rather than the MLS to see what the commissions are. As Niko said, the steering claim issue is something you've got to be aware of. You can't not show houses to a buyer that fits their needs just because it's only paying a 1% commission. So you're probably better off if it gets to that, picking the houses that would work, hoping the one that they actually want to buy has a good commission amount on it. And if not, well, you kind of lose out a little bit. Ways to protect against that. You know, I've thought about how the exclusive buyer agreements could be done. Could be structured a little bit like attorney retainer agreements are. Problem with that would be a lot of, like Mark was saying, first-time home buyers aren't going to have the money. So doing something like having them post an escrow, so to speak, with you, and then you get paid out of that once it closes, may not work for a lot of people. Other thing I've thought about is could set things up in such a way that your agreement says you get a certain flat amount, maybe base it on the amount of showings that you're taking people to, or a percentage of the price range that they're looking for, and then have it structured in a way that whatever the commission that's coming from the sale side of the transaction doesn't cover, the buyer's on the hook for the difference. So if you're representing them at 2.5% and the listing is only 2% to you, they've got to cover that other 0.5%. You know, I think a big issue with if the buyers really have to start paying the commission is how you actually make sure you get paid. And those are all things that are potentially going to come into play. Escrows like that, possibly even setting things up where you get paid on a by showing basis. You know, if you're taking somebody to 50 different houses, that's a lot of work. You should be getting paid more than the person you're taking to 1 or 2 houses. How that would work in practice in a buyer representation agreement is yet to be seen. But I think it could be a way to kind of structure things. I like the retainer agreement style of doing things, but I think that's gonna be next to impossible to get a buyer to agree to. Paying money up front and then you getting paid out of that escrow once the deal closes. And I think from a lending standpoint, that could be an issue as well.
There's a good faith deposit is allowed on a closing disclosure.
Yeah, that could work.
We have it, I got my closing disclosure, I can show it too.
Yeah, yeah. That's pretty much all I've got. Like I said, it's a little bit early to know for sure exactly how things will play out. That's just some possible ideas as to the way things can be restructured. But I think at least for the foreseeable future, it's gonna be a lot about getting the amount that you're offering on commission and your listings onto a website that you create for yourself or some of the other platforms. We've got experience with creating websites. So that's something that, you know, we can help you guys out with if that's a route you decide to go. And if it becomes necessary, once this all goes through.
Yeah, so, that kind of makes me stand up because it's my turn to talk and you guys should all see me. Really what I want to talk to you guys about is more so about, what you guys should be looking for as listing agents. In terms of being a listing agent and going out and saying, hey, you know, I want 2.5%. No one's gonna argue with you. What are they, what is there to argue? I'm gonna come to your house, I'm gonna take professional photographs of it, I'm gonna hold open houses. I'm gonna do this, that, and the other. You have tangible items that you could say, look, this is what I'm doing. You can see the results as to what I'm doing and bringing in. The thing is though, is that as the listing agents, you guys also have to kind of work to protect one another in a way that's going to protect you, protect your client, and just kind of help you still sell houses. What I want you guys to be aware of is if you do set up your own websites, the thing you got to take into consideration is people have the attention span of like less than 60 seconds. So what's going to end up happening if we've all seen these people before. You have the people that have the super old house and they're like, this house is $700,000. And you're like, no, it's not. And they're like, all right, whatever. So they list it way too high. And then they say, hey, I only want to give out 3.5%. So say you go out, you make your own website and you say, hey, the commission that's being offered is 3.5%. You tell your person, you got to tell them, hey, listen, you got to go at 5. No one's going to want to see this house. I think it's overpriced. I'm going to have a real conversation with you. This is what's going on. They say, no, I don't care. 700,000, 3.5%. This is what we're going to give out. Well, what's going to happen is brokers that are going out that may have shown 40, 50 houses to somebody that are starting to get tired, that have a little click fatigue, that don't feel like constantly going to everyone's different websites and see what's going on. What's going to happen with that person is $700,000 listing price. It's not moving. They're going to go, hey, let's offer, it's going to be cheaper to pay out a commission. Let's offer a commission. And then you're going to stick it back on. And what's going to happen? No one's going to get an alert to say, hey, look, here's a price drop. No one's going to get anything to say, look, this is a better deal for everyone. Then all of a sudden they're going to have a commission that's going to be now being given that they didn't want to give. Then you're going to be pushing to do, drops on the price itself. Then they start getting mad at you. Whereas if you have that conversation up front with them and you say, listen, this is what it's going to take to sell your house. We could do this and then we could start lowering the price accordingly. But if you're not offering out a commission, it's not going to really help you out. And then if you try and move your commissions later on, then I don't think it's going to really help you when everyone else has seen this house already and has already moved on to something else because they don't want to keep checking websites to see what the commission is at. So that's something that you guys definitely want to be looking out for. The other thing is, have your attorneys do net sheets. I can't tell you how often, I have a client that I talk to and they're like, yeah, I got this net sheet, said I was going to make $25,000 more than I am. And I'm like, well, you have an item mortgage on here, or you have a forbearance on here. You didn't tell your attorney about that, or you didn't tell your broker about that. There's no way for any one of them to know that that even exists. Here we are now. So have your attorney do your net sheets. That way you get a pretty close amount of what you're looking at. And then just the last thing that I kind of want to hit on real quick is check your listing agreements. Be proactive. Make sure you're getting paid what you're getting. Make sure your commission goes over. And, I know we all get busy and everything like that, but you know, when the closing's going on, it's always nice to kind of check in, you know, maybe call the title company and be like, hey, just want to make sure my commission's being paid out at X amount. And, you know, it's better to do that while the closing's going on, rather than when the attorney's in his car driving back to his office and then he goes, hey, I'll let you know in about 45 minutes, or even worse, you end up finding out that the commission was wrong and then you're all scrambling, saying, oh, you know, Remax will cut you a check, or you guys can write a check, or you can all bring your checks back and we'll figure it out. What can you do? What should you?
All right, I'm walk my giant ass back here. How y'all doing? I'm Michael Watkins. I'm the president of Watkins Legal Group. I've unfortunately been doing business with most of these gentlemen for like the last half decade. And yeah, we all do hundreds all over Illinois. Yeah, I'm talking to you today about the buyer's agency, kind of what to expect. And I'm gonna start with just kind of a brief gloss of you're doing, first off, you're doing the right thing by actually showing up, being active and trying to figure it out. Number two, be proactive, because right now we don't know exactly what is coming down the pipeline. But if you're proactive, it's gonna give us much better chance to succeed for you. And if they start getting into things with taking away your commissions, when you use lawyers that are proactive, we can find ways around it. I literally thought of on the way down here, if you can negotiate that commission is a seller's concession, the next thing that us lawyers think of is, what if there's a bunch of repairs that need to be needed? That's 10 grand. Tony's gonna hate us because there's $25,000 in commission. Well, we're lawyers. We can negotiate. I can go back and write in my attorney review letter. I want it to be understood that in case we exceed the allowable maximums, I want it converted to a commission. Then all of a sudden your commission's converted back. Now the buyer has the full access for you. There's a lot of different things. It's going to take creativity, a lot of communication, because it could go the commercial way, which is going to be a whole lot of phone calls and emails where you're sitting there, your client has 40 homes they want to see. You call all 40 listing agents. What are you paying out? What are you paying out? What are you paying out? Then you turn to your buyer and say, you have an agreement with me at 2%. These are all the homes you're protected on. These are the ones that we're going to have to give me some money. This is the one where you need to come up with $8,000 out of your pocket for me. And you're occasionally going to have a buyer be like, you know what? Well, I love that house that's out of pocket, but I don't want to pay you out of pocket. And that's where you can get into those sellers concessions I talked about, trying to twist them around back through the attorney review portion to try to make it better for the lenders. And it's just going to take a whole lot of proactivity, communication, because if you're talking, it's going to make everything easier, because when you explain to your buyer at the beginning, this is what you're looking at, it's going to make the process much smoother, because then when we're doing this under attorney review, if the seller side says no, like, I know I kind of got you dead to a corner, you're going to lose some money, we can go back to the buyer and start talking to them, because this has all already been discussed prior and they know exactly what they're getting involved with. Because there's going to be, I guarantee you, because I've already had it happen last year with the buyer's exclusive agency agreement, where the payout didn't match what the agreement was. My agent told absolutely nobody, and he told my buyer during their final walkthrough that he had to bring her $1,000 check to the closing. He didn't have $1,000. And then I'll tell you the other tough part that everybody's in. We love that you refer us business. It is amazing. It's great. I love all the agents I work with. We're not your lawyers. We're the lawyers for the buyer. We're the lawyers for the seller. So now all these awesome friendships we've had and relationships for a decade, I have to go look at your agreement and make sure you follow everything correctly. Because otherwise I lose my law license, because I have to tell that buyer, like, your agent messed up here, so you don't have to pay them. And now the agent that referred me the business, we get to be in that tough spot of like, hey, you forgot to follow all the right processes and steps. So now you just lost out on your commission. In that case, that guy's cousin gave her the money and then he wrote a bunch of negative reviews about her on the internet for it. And that's not something that anyone else wants to have happen. And if we do everything from the beginning where we communicate with each other, we work together, you're having the tough conversations, and have it at the very beginning before they even have a home, just so they know exactly before they even see their first home what they're looking for. It's going to make it so that we can all keep making these deals go through, and we can find a way. We're lawyers, we're creative. You've seen the way that we all work at closings about last minute final walkthrough credits, changing attorney's fees, changing this, changing that. here's a Zelle for $100 because your doorbell doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like, we got our ways that we can try to help you to work out with you. And I will say that there's gonna be a lot of old lawyers that are stuck in their ways, that they're used to doing nothing. But they've existed forever doing the bare minimum. And they're just gonna kind of lay it out there. If you have a lawyer just laying it out there, like, it is what it is, sorry, sucks, you're not getting paid. It's probably gonna be someone you don't wanna do business with, because there's going to be ways, solutions and stuff that we can figure it out. But if you choose to not explain something to your client, you have them sign that agreement, they don't really know what they signed, maybe you didn't do it correctly. And all of a sudden it's the last minute and you're calling us, instead of saying like, hey, you know, there's the basement's flooding, you're like, hey, by the way, my buyer didn't know that they have to give me $7,500 tomorrow. And you got a buyer with a clear to close, it's gonna put everyone in a tough spot, because the buyer's in breach of contract if they don't close, but they're in breach of contract with their agent if they don't pay their agent. And it's just gonna create a whole mess. But if we're proactive, working, everyone's on the same page, I think we're gonna be able to figure it all out. And then I don't know who's next.
Yeah, so I mean, with that being said, following Michael's lead, a couple of things here. Just always remember your max credits, conventional is 3%, FHA is 6%. Then we're gonna have Tony stand up right now talking about, you know, you gotta be careful because buyers do have minimum contributions and credits can be cut at the last minute, which we've all seen before.
Expiration, pretty very all sins.
Your pre-approvals are more important than ever, and then talk to your lender before you make any sort of credits or anything like that.
If you guys don't have one of these, grab one of these, I'll pass them out. This actually, the concessions, because it is a little bit differently. Here's our couple problems. I'll try to stay. The biggest concern that I have in the concessions is, investment properties, max concessions 2%. Max seller contribution is 2% on all investment properties. You got a little challenge there. Conventional, under 10% is 3%. Over 10% down payment, we go up to 6%. Then you go over 25%, you go up to 9%. That's on contribution. So if you read this sheet, it's primary, then it says less than 10%, then the number down here, max seller contribution 3%. 10 to 25%, 6%. So kind of you look at here, then you look at here and it gives you contributions. Here's the big thing that I'm gonna go over a CD in a minute. My other issue I really have is let these asshole politicians do what they want until the veterans stand up and say, screw you. VA loans are absolutely 100% not allowed for the realtor to be paid on the buyer's side of the CD. It is against the law. So now we get a 3% concession. You want to throw your commission and I put on the HUD, pay to Kim Wirtz $6,000. We're in violation. We can't do it. Because she's got a 2% comp agreement signed. Wait till the politicians and the veterans see that. And all of a sudden now their zero down is 5% down. So the veteran gets 100% financing. That's where the politicians are going to start seeing some of the BS and learn that this rule is a bunch of shit. So 2013, we went through TRID.
Yeah.
That's where we had to change all the loan officer compensation. I've been doing this since '99. I own my office. Every loan officer like, the world's coming to an end. I'm not making any money. The asshole, my loan officers are making more money now than they ever made. We changed everything from percentages to basis points. I don't know if we can do it here, but just a thought. It's a funny thing because everybody's like, you know, this is a basis point, this is a basis point. It's not, I don't pay you 1.2% of the loan amount. I pay you 87 basis points. And we don't pay commission, which is really, you know, 7/8.
No, it's like, what's a basis point? I don't worry about that. It's fine.
It's 1/100%. So the joke in my office is Tony Senior's been doing it so long that he can tell you what a pencil costs in a basis point. It's just, you break it down. Here's an actual closed CD where a realtor in Kankakee, and I got his disclosure here too. I can pass these out. Don't tell him I sent him. No, Rory knows I'm using it. Rory charges 4% buyer's agency. The buyer's agency agreement there, you'll see 4% on the agency agreement. And on this closing disclosure, this was a 4% buyer's agency agreement on this closing disclosure. What I wanted you to look at, I kind of waited out, some blacked out some stuff. 4 asterisks. First asterisk, and the reason I asterisk is not because title fee's high in Cook County, but in KK County, title's $2,400. So imagine this $200,000 purchase in Cook or Will. It's gonna be 4,000 up here.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why I asked, we're gonna have to add that to it later. Go to line, section H other. You're gonna see real estate commission, Chicago Banker Realty, 3485 on the borrower paid. That's this column. And the next column is 4335 seller paid. This is what they're gonna see at closing if you don't have 100% realtor or brokerage paid commissions. They're gonna see this. This deal is a $6,000 closing cost credit, which I'll get to the next page. But I wanted you guys to see it. Section H towards the bottom. You'll see a little black mark, 3435 and 4355. That's what the CDs are gonna look like. So Mark, when you're at the table, be prepared, they're all gonna be complaining. No, I'm just like, I'm giving you a heads up.
It's some.
Right. So then I asterisk on the next page, the last page, seller credit, $6,000. So your seller concessions are gonna be bulked into a seller credit here. So let's say you get a 6% concession because, or a 5% concession because they're putting the seller, the listing agent's paying 0 to you. You got a buyer's agency agreement for 2.5 points. You get a 5% credit. On 200 grand, you'll see 10,000 here, and on the other page, you're gonna see your 2.5% on your buyer's agency agreement, then I take the rest off the actual closing costs. I'll go over it one more time. 5% seller credit on 200 grand is 10 grand. The listing agent, let's say you're the listing agent, you can't convince your sellers to pay the buyer's agent Mark anything, but you have a buyer's agency agreement with him saying you're going to get, as a buyer, Mark's gonna have a buyer's agency agreement saying you're getting 2.5% regardless. If you read the agreement, it generally says up to 3%, regardless of what the commission is paid through, or offset what the commission paid through the brokerage, the listing side. It's kind of how these read. I've got a couple different versions I'm gonna send to Mark. But the concession is bulked up here. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. It's bulked up right here. It's not gonna be, oh, Tony, we got a 5% concession, but they only want to put 3% down conventional. I want to say we're in a little bit of trouble. If you weren't at the little thing, 3% down conventional, we only can get a 3% credit. 5% down conventional, we only get a 3% credit. So as much as you guys hate FHA, you're gonna love to embrace it because I could do 3.5% down with a 6% credit. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. VA can get a big closing cost credit, but we cannot distribute to an agent. It's against the law. Just remember that. Wait till the veterans start getting, why did I have to pay the realtor $10,000 because they charged me this.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
So with that, in that example, if the veteran was getting 100% financing, gets a big fat concession from the seller and they're getting cash back. Is there a way, like, what's the max out on the cash out, and then can they use it to pay the agent?
You can't
No.
get extra back. Total closing cost, points and fees. That's
Okay.
all they can use it for. They can't, the only thing they get back is the earnest money.
Okay.
It's closing cost, points and fees it has to be utilized on the CD. So if you get a big fat credit of 6% on a $200,000 deal on Kankakee where the title fees only $2,000, we're gonna have a hard time using all of it. Unless we just give them a super low rate and charge them a boatload of points, right? So
Yeah, that makes sense.
we can't just, I'm telling you guys, I think that's gonna fire up the federal government to rethink this policy. Thank you for serving our country. Bend over and give me 10 grand. I mean, honest to God, that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah, and especially in Illinois, when they're paying no property tax, if they're fully disabled or 70% disabled, to buy a $600,000 house, 100% financing, no property tax, and
Yeah.
hey, by the way, like,
Yeah, give me 14.
I'm gonna need some money now.
Right, but that's what your CDs are gonna look like, because when you go to closings, a lot of times, like, the lender gets blamed. Now you guys are gonna get blamed, no kidding you. But the lender does get blamed a lot at closing because the fees change or whatever. And this is gonna be a rude awakening. And that is a real big thing. I have one up, that's your stuff. That's you. So what this agent specifically does, when he sends us a contract, we get his buyer's agency agreement. And he sends us what, on a simple sheet, what the seller's paying, if it's 2.5, 3, whatever. So that when we put the file together, we can disclose it to the borrower at initial onset. Because we can't add this. We can't add it later. We can't say, we can reduce it, but we can't add. That's why we always make our fees look higher in the beginning because we can't reduce it. The law is if we put a fee on here and add to it, an appraisal fee, for example, if I put $450 and it's $550, I have to pay the $100 plus I pay a 10% fine for every fee I under disclose. It's called the tolerance cure. You seen them on HUDs? That means it just comes right out of our pocket.
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? Yeah, it sucked. That's why we over disclose and then we make it feel good at the table.
Right, exactly, because I
So-
get screamed at about that, why am I paying this much? I'm like, relax, go.
Massachusetts, they've been doing it too. So this is a fee sheet from a deal I'm doing in Massachusetts. They just send me the purchase price, what the commission is, what the address is. There's a second page that I can send in there. So the buyers, all the contacts for everybody. It's gonna just require more paperwork. I know I was talking with Kim back there. She said, what about putting the commission agreement, what you're gonna pay the listing or the buyer's agent in with your disclosures? You know what I mean? Like in the MLS, but in an actual legal document, right?
Oh,
We
yeah.
agree. What, is that gonna be okay?
I can't list on the.
Yeah, you just don't
You
want.
can't put, no, they took the field out of the MLS.
Well,
You
with
can
the summer,
attach
I
the
don't know if they will.
disclosures to.
So if that field's not in the MLS,
PDF, but I mean, if you're,
But it says, I think it's gonna be the rules, like the MLS rules.
yeah, they haven't promulgated the rules yet, that's part of the problem, we're just reading this.
okay,
settlement.
so
Which
the
gets-
last piece is Zillow's not gonna be able to show your commissions of Realtor and Redfin. Because all their data is bought through the MLS. So if the MLS eliminates a data field, they can't transpose the data. Right? The last piece, my conspiracy theory.
Yeah, I wanna hear, I like this one.
I think either homes.com, Zillow, Redfin, or Realtor is gonna become your national MLS. That's what I think is gonna happen.
Yep.
Because we're doing a presentation, our CEO's been talking to like all the attorneys and Fannie Mae Friday, so he's doing a presentation I can invite agents to if you wanna be invited to, it's 11 o'clock on Friday. But NAR right now, their total revenue last year was 23 million, did you see that?
That's it.
That's it, their total reserve account is 700 million.
What's their
Their
legal?
legal account is negative 10 million. Their proposed settlement for 400 was over 4 years.
Yeah,
They don't even have the money to pay it. So NAR's gonna go bankrupt. I really think the idiot from Zillow who used to own Expedia got rid of travel agents, because that's who owns Zillow. The guy that owned Expedia now owns Zillow. I don't think you'd ever get rid of the realtors though, because this is the largest purchase of your life.
Yep.
Yeah.
How is Eli gonna pick on you because you're the youngest guy in the room? How is Eli gonna know that this house seems okay? The floor is, oh, just a little crooked, don't worry, they pay me 3% to the sell side. The dirty agents are gonna screw people.
oh, yeah.
And then we're gonna have all kinds of appraisal issues. Kim asked a good question also earlier. What about jacking the price up to make sure I get paid? Not jacking up, but putting in, going over list price. I'll bring some appraisals in the room someday if you want to, but they'll explain how they look at it. Conventionally, we haven't had a big issue going over list as long as it's reasonable. I had one that came in, was an offer for 550 in Plainfield, it was listed at 495. The appraisal came in at 515. And everybody's yelling at me. I'm like, why'd you list it for 495? I mean, I was like,
Yeah,
well, use this comp in the subdivision a mile away, every house there is 600. Okay, yours is old as crap, so the appraisers generally will give it to you on conventional up to 3%. You start putting 6% over list price, make sure there's justification or comparables within a mile, same school district. Is what they're gonna look for, but I can bring appraisers and talk about that all day. that's really what I wanted to make sure you guys knew, what the total sessions that were allowable per loan type transaction. Yes, ma'am. Oh,
Wait, we're supposed to wait till the end, sorry.
I think that was it. Got a copy of CD, got a copy of the broker's agreement where it says 4%. Thank you, Mark. You guys
Thank you,
know-
Tony.
Thanks, Tony.